So today is a bit of a treat, actually. Rather than just having one speaker, we're going to have three. And these will be three people that aren't necessarily used to coming up on stage, but we're a really welcoming community here. So could you do me a favor? When they come up, we're going to give them a loud clap and a cheer. And then when they finish, we're going to give them a loud clap and a cheer. So let's try it, and we're going to invite our first person up, who is Trisha. Can we give a massive, yeah! Yeah!
Good morning, everybody. That was a very lovely cheer. Thank you very much. So, what you see here is from my 5-year-old Robin's Bible storybook. And this is what it looks like. And for bedtime, we read the story of Moses and the parting of the Red Sea. Robin gripped her soft toys when God's people reached the water with the Egyptian army charging behind them. And Robin asked, "Do they have boats, Mama? Can they swim? What are they going to do, Mama?" Now, let's just pause for a second. Can you imagine if that was you? I know what I'll say. Crap, I'm going to die. What do I do? There's nothing I can do. And this is the way I felt when the medical report said my dad had cancer, the way I felt when my own medical report said they found a lump in my right breast, the way I felt when I was passed up for that promotion, the way I felt when my marriage was ending, the way I felt when my child was being bullied at school, the way I felt when all of these challenges in the last 18 months emerged out of nowhere. God saw my tears, He saw my headache, but time and time again, God made a way. He has beauty for those ashes, but the key is that I had to let go of those ashes before I saw the beauty. It's an exchange. And today I want to share with you the first and greatest exchange of my life. In 2006, I graduated with a philosophy degree at the LSE. In this degree, I was taught to ask, is to believe to see? Is to see to believe? I was not a Christian in my younger years, but I knew in the back of my mind that God existed, and I owned a Bible. I started my career out as an investment banker. And for a few years, I started a master's in finance at the same time while I was working. I remember working really, really hard and working past midnight in the office, only to be at my desk at 7 a.m. the next day. My boss was an ex-Navy SEAL and was extremely abrupt, rude, offensive, demanding. Then the financial crisis hit, and the friends I held dear were let go and moved back to their country. I have never, ever felt so lonely in my life. And it is true when they say loneliness is deadly. I started getting ill a lot. A permanent flu emerged. I had stomach ulcers, multiple stomach ulcers, skin problems, rashes on the back of my neck that just won't go away. I started losing hair by the handful. Every day, my existence was being yelled at managing directors, no sleep, feeling zero confidence in a male-dominated environment. I had no support, no friends. I felt so helpless, so vulnerable. I fell into deep, deep depression. I started having panic attacks at home, at work, on the tube. They became more and more frequent, and I didn't want to live anymore. Trust me when I said I didn't know what to do. Trust me. And one night I cried. I can't handle this anymore, Lord. I'm so scared. I'm scared to quit my job, my degree. I have no one to talk to. I am so lonely. I was so stuck. I felt my situation was permanent. My head was spinning. My body was in pain. My mind was in pain. And in desperation, I picked up my dusty Bible and I randomly opened it. And I remember this moment vividly. I landed on Exodus. Thanks, David. He's awesome. I landed on Exodus chapter 14, verse 13, when God's people were caught between the sea and the entire Egyptian army behind them. This picture. And Moses said, "Do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still." Are you serious? Still? Can you not see? Everything is blowing up around me. And in absolute disbelief, I flipped to another random page and my eyes landed on Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well." And that verse completely jolted my entire being. Hang on, has my entire focus been totally wrong? I have only been focused on my own problems, my degree, my job, my loneliness, my depression. What do I got to lose if I experimented? What if I shifted my focus on God? After all, I had hit rock bottom, absolute rock bottom. And there was no other option but to let go. And quite frankly, I just didn't care anymore at that point what would happen to my life. And that was when the very first and greatest exchange took place. In my little bedroom, I still remember, in my tiny flat with tears of total surrender. I had let go of the ashes, but it was only when I let go that I began to see the beauty. Strangely enough, when I actively made time for God by praying and reading the Bible, I seemed to have more time, more energy, more focus as my relationship with God began to flourish. A job found me. I made new lifelong friends. My stomach ulcers healed. My skin became clear. I stopped my antidepressants. I started exercising. I became interested in nutrition. I became interested in helping others. And God said, "You give me the ashes, and I give you the beauty. I do great things in your life. New people, new opportunities, healing, strength, energy, zest, passion, promotion." And after 9 years, after my desperate prayer, God did a new thing. My dad had retired in Hong Kong and applied to 15 seminary schools in the US and Canada. There was no prospect of him coming to the UK. Then, out of nowhere, an old friend who hasn't spoken to him for over a decade got in touch and phoned my dad and said how much he enjoys studying at the London School of Theology. And in 2015, exactly 9 years after my prayer of loneliness and desperation, on the day, I had never, ever conceived this answer as even within my realm of possibilities, that my mom and dad would move to London. And this was an amazing answer to my prayer a decade ago on that very day. God never forgets. If you stay in faith, you're going to see the new thing. He will free you from limitations, negative things, turn them into good. Somehow, it just happens. He's going to break through chains, bulldoze depression. And he's going to catapult you and make you an example of his goodness. For 9 years, I did not see it. But I would say this: get your hopes up and start expecting God's favor. Start believing for the unusual. Just because you don't see it right now, it doesn't mean God is not in action. Mobilizing something better than you can even imagine. Lining up ducks for the breakthrough. But what we have to internalize, and what I learned the hard way, is is the trust that his timing is never early and never late. And every day, wake up and think, this is a new day. And God is going to do a new thing for your life. Thank you.
There he is. Guys, James Francis is coming on up. Let's hear it. Boom. Ra, 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 ra. Lovely to see you, brother. All the best.
Thank you. Good morning. It's weird doing this again. Growing up is a wild experience for everyone. The person you are today is far removed from the person that you were 10 years ago. And it's crazy, right? We go through our lives exchanging values, exchanging relationships, life lessons. Our bodies physically change, but it's still the same you. One thing for me in my life that has never changed, however, is music. I'm at music college for classical performance, but I started music when I was just 4 years old. I still remember my mum taking me and my older brother to violin lessons before she realized that sibling rivalry was probably not the best idea. And I switched to, the next smallest instrument, the double bass. My own journey since, though, by association, my own faith journey was through this lens of music. Growing up, I was in every church environment imaginable. My own home church was a Baptist church. That's where I started learning to sing. My family's church was evangelical, and then to a different church that was Pentecostal. My grandmother was and still is a vicar of her own church. And then I became a chorister at Westminster Abbey. Music has always been this through line for me and my identity when all else changed. And so for my faith journey, serving God was second nature to me. I did it every day as a musician, as a chorister. When I was 9 years old, I already had a concept of having my life being in servitude to a God that's greater than me, of serving God being my job. But the one thing I struggled with in all that time was always being seen. After finishing Westminster Abbey, I won a scholarship to Eton, and I attended there for 5 years. And it had become rather blindingly clear that throughout all of these different social contexts, having to be like this social chameleon of I fit in everywhere because I needed to, but I also fit in nowhere because my context changed so often. So I found it difficult to see who are my people, Is it these people I go to school with who I feel like I know nothing about? Is it my family that I see less than my own peers from boarding? Is it my home friends that I see even less? Does God really see me throughout all of this change? When I was 16, I was contending with all of these thoughts, and I went to Soul Survivor, and by the end of it, I felt at peace. I felt like I'd finally encountered God, been seen by God, and felt that God had really seen me in a time of uncertainty in my life. And then we had this thing called a global pandemic. And the lesson throughout all of this period of time that God has taught me is that faith is a walk with God. There are these lucid moments of God displaying extraordinary power, and it's beautiful, and it's encouraging, and it's edifying to our spiritual lives. But God does his best work in the mundane of our everyday lives. Our experiences are defined by the people we choose to encounter, the people we choose to be, the people that allow for God to use them. And at that time, all that 16-year-old James needed to hear is, it's okay. You're allowed to just be. You're loved by God just because he is love. And so what did that moment mean when I was 16? It was through the noise of all these different contexts, cultural, socioeconomic, that none of that mattered before God. And it's so important because that freedom is only found in our relationship with God. Even though music was the through line for me, it's like I said, serving God was my job. And sometimes it felt like it. Sometimes it looked very different from a relationship with God. Sometimes we get it twisted. I got it twisted that God loves me because I do these things, because I'm a chorister, because I serve in a consistent way. And so even though music served as a constant, it was true freedom in realizing that God just accepted me anyway. The freedom of knowing that God is greater than my categories. And so I'd love for us to ask ourselves, would we allow in the same way for God to move through us? I'm not saying that everyone has to become an evangelist for the gospel. That's not everybody's gifting, but just an openness to what God is able to do through you for the majority of people is that first step. To know that as human beings, as Christians, that we are the reflection of God's character, of his mercy, of his grace, of his truth, of his kindness. Music for me is still the through line for me every day. I'm doing a worship set later this evening. And so that is the gift that God has given me to help others. And so whatever is your cultural context, we can all benefit from a little bit of introspection and openness to allow to see God's work move through us. Even if that means you play the double bass now, because that instrument's way too heavy.
Now it gives me great pleasure to welcome up our final speaker, just as we do some technical stuff. Serene H, ladies and gentlemen, yeah!
This is the first time sharing, and my name is Serene, if you don't know me. I was born and raised in France, but both my parents are from Tunisia. And I'm not gonna lie, this whole process of Jigsaw, embracing your heritage, being a person of color, have felt uncomfortable, painful at times, and also like I'm a fraud. And it's not until that we did Mirror, which was a course that the Jigsaw team did, that I realized how much internalized the vision of who I was formed and shaped by my experience in France, being a child of immigrant. The thing is, France, it's really a secular country, to the point that you don't even have RE lesson, because we are secular. And in France, it's all about integration to the country, to the culture. Especially if you're Muslim, you can't even wear a headscarf in public function, in school or in work. I remember the first time I came to London 10 years ago, I was so shocked to see when I went to H&M, the lady at the counter who was serving me was wearing a headscarf. I was like, how is it even possible? And so France is Islamophobic and has a racist history, in particular with her old colonies, Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria, which we call it the Maghreb there. And all the Arabs, which are the troublemakers, they loot the country and they hate France. So without realizing, I have absorbed that narrative, and although my mom really wanted us to integrate, to the point that I myself become racist, or I didn't like Arabs. I was upset if I hear people speaking Arabic in the bus. It's all about integration, speak your own language at home. I had mostly French friends, and you don't realize how ashamed you feel and how you hate your own kind. And the media just emphasize that narrative. And your friends laugh, you are the Arabs, your French is not perfect, and in France, I couldn't escape this narrative. Where in London, when I came, I realized I always say, I'm French, but here I am. And you know, there's this thing called colorism, and compared to some of my siblings, even part of Tunisia, I am fairly fair, and I could blend. And here is why I feel like a fraud every time we speak about people of color, ethnicity, because I have the gift to blend, and people of color might recognize my heritage. White people, I think if I say I'm French, they won't question it. Especially that now I think I have like straight hair. I don't have my curls anymore. And so, but doing Mirror and speaking with Eileen, just opened up that thing that was so locked and integrated for my whole 23 years of my life in France. And I felt like, the other, and I was ashamed of my heritage, and when in the mirror, we asked you a question, how do you think you are perceived by the Church of England? And I put it in my French context. My answer, without thinking, was the enemy. And I think I was so shocked because I think I never realized how for the 23 years of my life that somehow I felt like the enemy. And now I'm in this journey where I'm just starting to say that I was raised in France, and I couldn't say I'm Tunisian until, I don't know, a few months ago in tears. But there's also this fraud part. Will people think I am jumping on the train? And you know, my experience on racism is not as bad, and I have the gift to blend here. But it wasn't until Eileen told me, you can't control what people think, and you know what you're going through. And it's also why representation is so important, if not tokenism. But I don't put myself forward because I know people don't see me as a person of color. And part of my story is I used to have social anxiety, and I need to feel safe before I can open myself to people. And as well, I can feel overwhelmed by people. And I realized being seen scared me. And I guess it's because I had to hide or internalize. And it wasn't until Eileen told me, do you think some of your social anxiety might be due because of that? And that was like a truth bomb, because it was so internalized that I didn't realize. And it finally makes sense. And I didn't see Eileen for months after that. My parents are not perfect, and my dad could follow like the stereotypical Arab dad who's a bit cool emotionally. We don't speak about this deep stuff. There's no emotion of mental health. And you know, you might occasionally get spanked if you do something when you're young. But I know they both love me. And my dad worked hard for us. And so, yeah, I always wonder where did the social anxiety came, because I don't think I had a big trauma in my life. And I did have like a toxic group of friends, but now I'm only seeing through Eileen that might be part of it. And to this day, being seen is scary for me. I'm still on a journey. I think a big part of me is just learning to love myself and care, because I think I just become so detached of myself until Jesus called my name. I had built so many walls, hide, protection, detachment, to the point that I don't know who I was. And you know, I've learned to rely on myself, be strong, independent, resilient, isolate, but not with God, thank God. But yeah, God is my safe space more than people, but you need to be good with God and other people, both. And so I'm still in this process of figuring out what it means to embrace fully who I am, or even knowing who I am. I know my character traits, I know my Christian traits in a way, but authentic cultural heritage Syrian, I'm still figuring out, and I think it comes first with acceptance. I've always loved going to Tunisia. I used to go for my first 22 years every summer for 2 months. I speak Arabic. I didn't go for 10 years because I moved to London and money, da-da-da-da-da. But I've been going for the last 2 years as often as I can, and I love it. I still don't have an answer talking about it, I guess, or even doing, belly dance lesson was for me a way to connect with that part of me. But also I live in this tension that Tunisia and my extended family and my dad don't know about my vocation, that I'm training to become a priest because it's a Muslim country. And yeah, but I know also that I'm blessed because in those Arab country, contrary to the Western, it's all about open doors, sharing family meals. You don't have boundaries or invitation. And so every time I go there, I feel love. And in a way, I am learning to embrace, discover, and become more fully who I was created to be in the richness of it. But also here in Tunisia, I can't fully express that part, but I know God is with me. He never makes mistake. I'm not a mistake. You are not a mistake. You are wanted. He's a God of freedom. And that social anxiety and that love, or even the want to leave, will not have happened if not for Jesus, what he has done. He is the God of the reconciliation, first to him, which allows us to reconcile part of ourselves, and to others, which also help us in the journey. We need each other. We are all each other's neighbor. We are one body that he paid by his precious blood. He himself, Jesus, was oppressed. He was the other. He was a colonized Jew who suffered under an empire. And he identified with us and empowered us. And so can you imagine a church where we mean to be truly embrace our heritage, where we can all fully express ourselves, where we are all seen, known, and heard, the richness of our worship and community. And I think it all starts at the table, where we meet Jesus at the table, but also we meet each other. So please invite each other to your places. Amen.